Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for coming into this room for this session. This is the Durban Film March plus the Writers Guild South Africa session. Here we're talking, our topic is the African aesthetic. What makes African stories unique? A few housekeeping things. If you guys can put your phones onto flight mode or switch them off, and we'll just get into it because we do not have much time. I am Mongindaba. I'll let the panel introduce themselves, and I'm Mongindaba. I am the moderator for this session, and for the visually impaired, I'm just going to describe what I'm look like. I'm dark-skinned. I'm wearing a doek. It is a head wrap for those who don't know what it is. And I'm wearing various colors, bright colors. It's a fruit salad of colors, of bright colors. And I'm fat, but asikulap. I'll start from my far left, and they will introduce themselves and say what is their expertise in the industry.
Hello, everybody. I'm Gabriel, for the visually impaired. I am a relatively tall, transgender, passing guy wearing a keffiyeh today. Thank you for having me on this panel. I am a writer mostly, but also director and actor. And I am really focused on sort of queer, feminist, decolonial storytelling with my writers team that's sitting here in the audience, and excited to chat today. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Thuli. I am a writer and sometimes director, executive producer. I am a gorgeous black South African woman. I'm wearing a keffiyeh, I'm in black and white, and I beat my face into submission this morning.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Busisiwe Ntintili. I'm a Johannesburg-based filmmaker and television producer, writer, director, producer the past 25 years. My latest work is a heist series coming out in September called Levels. And I am wearing, I can never pronounce it, please help me, keffiyeh and brown skin, brown hair, brown dress. And cowboy boots.
Hi, I'm Mawatu Kau. I work mainly in the development space as a story consultant, but I've worked as a broadcaster, producer, and various things in the industry over the years. And I have short black hair. I'm also black, proudly so. I am wearing yellow shoes and a black outfit. And yeah.
Thank you so much. So because we don't have much time, I'll just get to it. What we're talking about is that when we speak of Nollywood, Bollywood, and Hollywood, people can immediately, conjure up images of what it is about. Even the K-dramas, the Japanese, the French stories, people can see what it is. Do we have that in South Africa? So I will ask the writers, as they've explained themselves, they have done this. Just I'm sure most of you in the room. Can we say the same for the films and television from the African diaspora, that we do have a unique storytelling?
I think we do, for the mere fact that we tell stories and we're from a world and a space and a time, and we live and we breathe and we're inspired. So we do have a unique voice. I think our aesthetic, for me, is driven by there's over 40 countries on the continent, so there can't be one version of an African story or an African aesthetic. I believe that that aesthetic is rooted in truth and honesty.
Anyone else wants to answer from that?
Yeah, I would agree. I also think which is something that we were discussing earlier, which is actually something, Gabe, so you brought up. It is, the premise of the question itself, right? It's like, what is the African aesthetic? There are
Yes.
over 50 African states. What is when you think of like Hollywood, no one goes like, oh, the Hollywood aesthetic. They go like, that's a Western. That's a crime, aesthetic. That's a bit neo-noir. So like we accept that the gold standard of storytelling, filmmaking, Hollywood, we understand there that like, oh yes, different voices from the place, different stories will call for a different aesthetic. But when we talk about African storytelling, it's like, well, what's the one thing? What's the one voice? What's the one aesthetic? Which I think, is dangerous. But like Mabatsu was saying, we definitely have an aesthetic, but it's several different things depending who's writing what you're talking about. But certainly tapping into truth and authenticity, I think, is a big part of it.
To add on the question, I would say that everybody says the stories, they have to go global. It's all the word, like it must be global, all that. Busi, I will throw this at you. Do we have a space in this world for, as African storytellers, to collaborate and reach this global, that everybody, especially commercial platforms, asking us about this? Do we have the space? Are we supported? Are we heard in this space for us to tell those unique African stories?
I think just to set context, I think when we talk about, African aesthetic or African voice, I always go back to my days in varsity and growing up in America and taking art history class and film studies classes. And I remember learning everything about the French New Wave movement, learning about Italian neorealism, but I never was taught anything about African cinema.
Yeah.
And I think what has happened is that we have taken sort of the innovations that have come out of Western cinema and claimed them and put a name to them and therefore elevated them to high art. And we haven't sufficiently done that with African cinema. So even sort of like, the father of cinema, all the great West African filmmakers, that preceded us, I didn't learn about them until I was an adult. Until I came back to South Africa and for the first time saw, films like Tuki Buki and Hyenas, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And my mind was blown because I was like, oh my God, I didn't know this kind of cinema existed in the world. And, and just the use of allegory and poetic imagery in some of these African films that I saw was astounding. So I really do think that as much as, yes, we have 50 states, we do have a flair, we do have a point of view as Africans that is completely unique to us. And it needs to be studied. That's just from an academic standpoint. But then, of course, we live in a world of business, and you're talking about globalization and commercialism. And we were making films and series now for people like Netflix and all the streamers and things like that. So we're always thinking about that. But I think the danger in globalization is there's a danger of silencing our voices by trying to appeal to everyone. Sometimes we appeal to no one. And so I think the more we tap into what makes us authentic, whatever that is, I think the better reach we'll have.
I'll go to you, Gabe, and add to what Busi is saying. But just to add as well, Busi talk about there's a danger of also silencing ourselves because we have to fit into certain boxes that is set by the Western standards. Do you think that hinders us, especially with this thing of like, let's commercialize the stories? Because as much as we can write the stories, we need the money to make the stories.
Exactly. I think we're at the mercy, unfortunately, of people who want us to commercialize everything and make it this idea of global audience. But I don't know about all of you, but as a writer, and I hope I can speak for the whole team of writers on here, we know that the most globally resonant stories are the most specific stories, right? And we see that time and time again, even on platforms like Netflix that have like a Money Heist or a Squid Game as the obvious examples of like making for their language, their locale, and then it going like huge, being a huge global success. And I think I have some hope in the fact that if we can retain our own sort of specificity, which is so broad that we have so many stories, not even just across the continent, but across our country that we are in right now, South Africa, there are so many different types of story, and the singular narrative will always be a damaging thing, in my view. And I think we can't get pigeonholed into what is an African aesthetic, but we should also hold with pride what is an African aesthetic. I think that duality is very, very true. And I look to something like Bollywood. There's a documentary series on Netflix called The Romantics that talks about Bollywood and how there was this kind of incredible boom in Bollywood where the Indian cinema makers were really finding money inside of India and audiences inside of India, and that's what created this huge, incredible industry. But then there was the sort of flip side to that good thing was the bad thing of it sort of pigeonholing every Indian filmmaker into making what is considered a Bollywood film to the outside eye. And I think we are in the same danger of that happening to us as we try to get money to be able to go global, still try and keep our stories specific and true and authentic.
Yes. So, Mabato, I'll talk, if you can say something on collaboration, because sometimes you just want to collaborate with people from other countries, especially countries that have money. And you collaborate, and sometimes you will feel that your story has to change, has to be tweaked here and there. How do you go around that as a creative so that your aesthetic is still there? The story you want to tell is still there, even if you are collaborating with people who are not from the continent?
Okay, I think first of all, I'll start by saying I think there needs to be a more concerted effort to collaborate on the continent, because I think we understand there's a common, at the risk of sounding like there's only one view on the continent, but actually that's not what I'm saying. I believe that have a common understanding of humanity on the continent that can allow us and give us the space to actually work together on the continent and therefore be a force globally. And therefore, when we go outside, we don't then get into a space where, I'll call it the West, dictates to us how we should tell those stories. And therefore, collaboration becomes more of a toxic relationship where the West decides how the story will live, because supposedly there is an economic ecosystem that says that if you tell the story in this particular way, there's a greater chance of it having global success. And what happens is we end up doing a couple of things. Either we get over-labbed, so to speak, in the art space, because we end up going to so many labs in order to be seen, and then the story becomes this thing that is supposed to appeal to the West because we want it to have the global. But I really think the first place to start is to collaborate on the continent, because the root of story, like I said in my previous answer, is truth. Yeah. And that truth is something that is unshakable. Genre can change. The marketing position can change, but the truth of a story, that's where, if we collaborate properly and work together, that's what's unshakable. And we need to start being unshakable as African storytellers, because we're so afraid. We want to appeal, we want to be at Cannes, we want to premiere at TIFF, but actually the reason why those spaces are so strong is because those people stood their ground, you know. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it does. I will go to Thuli about the collaboration, and also you touched on genre, because genres comes with these structures. The certain genre is structured like this. There's a way you write in genre. Doesn't that also affect the way that, especially African writers, the way that they want to write their stories, because you have to fit into these certain things that are the rules of that genre?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there can be real strength and power in collaboration, you know? Of course, there are the challenges and difficulties, but I think if you find a collaborative partnership that makes sense in that the truth of the story you're trying to tell is respected, And that is the foundation on which you build the collaboration. I think there can be real value, you know? I think genre has rules for a reason. It's like story structure, you know, people, oh my goodness, you'll hear to death, right? The hero's journey. But, yeah, but what about, you know? But I think, not to be pedantic or prescriptive, but even in your life, if you think of a good storyteller, someone who's at a party and you're like, as soon as you hear their voice go up, you're like, oh, I want to hear that story. I know it's going to be a ride. There's a structure to it, right? And so I think structure can really help. It can lean in. You can have a great idea that's maybe not quite hitting, and maybe it's just a structure thing that's off. Maybe it's a genre thing that's off. And I think when you collaborate, you're able to find people who sometimes have a strength where you aren't as strong. And yeah, like storytelling for me, filmmaking, TV, it's a collaborative sport. It's a team sport. And so I think as long as the people collaborating have full respect and are unshakable in respecting the truth of the story, I think there can be real value in that. And being guided by form and genre and, you know, being guided by it, letting it be something that kind of holds your hands and helps you, not something that puts you in jail and you can't, you know, move.
Can I add to that?
Okay.
I also just want to echo what you're saying, because I really believe that some of these, the dramaturgy and the so-called rules that have guided or governed, I don't know, storytelling, you know, call it what, hero's journey, 3-act structure, how to approach character, want, need, flaw, all of those things, I think they aren't necessarily the enemy at times. I think what is going on when we resist those things is perhaps just either the fear of not knowing how to use those tools, but also I really believe that if we go back to the truth of the story, those things can be moved, shifted, and changed. And they don't become shackles for the story. And that's when people feel like somebody else is imposing their way on my story, because it starts becoming a shackle.
Maybe then it's a place of communication, because how do writers, if we're getting practical, because it's nice to talk about these rules and everything, but what if I can't communicate that when, let's say you are pitching or you are trying to work with a collaborator and explaining what is it that you want to do, but you don't know how to communicate. How do people put it forward and communicate with that? You know, because some of us don't know these structure words, these filmic words have a story, especially from writing. I'm not even talking people who are producers and whatever. Just when you are just a writer and you have a story to tell. Gabe,
you're right. I just wanted to say that speaks also to language. And to empowering storytellers to be able to tell their stories in their own language, which is also, you know, part of the sort of the colonial system that we've inherited, is that English is our medium of, you know, of television and most film, certainly in South Africa. And so we basically, you exclude a whole of amazing storytellers who might not be, you know, that proficient in English, and stories, you know, and points of view. But I just wanted to say about the structure is that, you know, I teach structure in my writers' rooms and in workshops, but at the same time I think, you know, you want to learn the rules, but then you also need to know how to break them. So I agree with you. And I think some of the most fascinating movies I've seen that have stayed in my consciousness are the ones that experimented with structure, that experimented with memory, with time, with space, with editing. And so I think we always have to be pushing ourselves as storytellers to be like, is this really the best way, you know, to tell the story? And even with genre, like, why don't we have Westerns, we have this, why don't we have our own African genres, you know, and our own formats that we can also sell to the world? When you talk about also commercialization, I mean, there's a huge commercial potential on this continent. If we really embrace our own gifts, I think.
Yeah. You want to add anything, Gabe?
I was going to say a similar thing about language and how I think even when you come back to the teaching of writing, let alone the actual making of the movie, I think there is a barrier when a lot of our education around filmmaking is in English, and where in actual fact, like oral storytelling predates any kind of like filmmaking work that ever happened and follows the same rough idea of story. All know story in our hearts. It's not something that Aristotle came up with. It's story as a beginning, middle, end. Something happens. I care what happens. That is basically structure. And all the other tentpoles that we stick to that as screenwriting lecturers or teachers or screenwriters ourselves are just ways of, as you said, communicating those rules that actually, if you do them, can completely free you instead of shackling you. So I think I would like to see more in our learning about film. I'd like to see a wider variety of teaching styles and languages, which I think will help free up the kinds of films that we can make. Because I think language is a huge part of story, obviously. Not just dialogue, but how you think about the world and how you talk about the world. Yeah.
And then I just want to discuss the platforms, distributions, the platforms, the channels that we go to, the streamers, because it's all good you write your story that is very unique in an African way, but do we have the platforms for these stories? Are the platforms brave enough to say, I can try and tap into this new kind, it's not even new, like you said, it's stories that are there. Do we have the platforms that are accepting to this? And how do we bridge that? Or, as much as I've heard in writing rooms and also when we're doing writing workshops where people say, there is a story that I can just send there, that's it. There's the one that I want to do. The real one that I want to do. Yeah. When are we going to get to a place where we just do amazing stories that are us, rather than saying, I'll do anything so I can submit it there, so that I can get paid? Where is the money to say, let's just do the stories that we really, really want to do?
May I jump in very quickly on that before it goes to you all, which is that I think from a queer perspective as well, I've felt, especially recently, but always felt this thing of like needing to convince someone to let me tell a story and then like sneaking in my most sort of pushing queer stuff in it, and I think that isn't just a queer thing. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I don't know, I remember sneaking, I was a head writer of Generations, and sneaking in storylines that I knew the producers absolutely would not let me do if and just going under the radar. And you end up doing that, to be able to survive commercially, which is such a compromise, right? You end up just let me just put this little subversive thing in this novella, or, when really you want to be doing sci-fi, you want to be doing whatever. But the truth of the matter is, look, it's people who have I know so many writers who have amazing stories, and they say, do you think this platform will take it, this platform? And I think submit. Submit, keep submitting, keep submitting, keep submitting. They say, oh, we want this. Right now they say, oh, we want crime dramas, or we want, there'll always be a thing we want. But you look at Squid Game, it took that guy 10 years to get someone to say yes to him. But I think you're going to get more no's than yeses. And the flip side is, if no one is taking your thing, how can you make it yourself? And I think we need to be looking at those kinds of collaborations as well, to say, listen, are you going to wait 20 years for somebody to finally give you a green light to make your dream story? Or are you going to collaborate with people, put your 5 cents together, and just make it yourself, and look at different platforms?
There's also a main thing, and I'll go to you, Babato and Tuli, where most writers feel like, myself included, where you pitch some stuff and then you are told, go watch this. And it's like, can I do my story without watching some Hollywood or some European movie? Can I just do it? And doesn't that also hinder, I'm going to go watch that thing and now I'm going to be thinking about that movie or that series when I'm writing my own story. Why must I watch something else? Why can't I just tell my story the way I want to tell it?
Well, I think, there's so much in this conversation. It's So important. But like as we're talking now, I'm also thinking there's the economics of this business, because those people will look at it from their bottom line, which kills story. And we know that this is a global problem. It's not just a problem on the continent. Andy Kaufman about it, Hollywood is dying right now because of the very thing. Execs are killing stories, and because they want to feed the bottom line. But at the same time, I also understand how difficult it is to make what we do. Our parents are right. We should have been accountants. Because it's just easier to be an accountant, you know.
Make those books balance and you're done.
Because what we do is so exceptionally powerful, so exceptionally difficult, and so hard to actually find the money to make. So people are finding themselves just kind of bending over to the needs and the wants of these platforms, because as you say, they want to make money and they want to tell their story, and we're passionate about what we do. However, I know that there are people we were talking about in the short film space, and I really, really believe it. I feel it in my bizarre bones that something's got to give soon, because we cannot be telling the same stories over and over. And audiences are not dumb. They are feeling it, they are seeing it. Like literally, I was in Katlehong about a year ago, and there are people there who are like, TV, what's there? You know, because they can feel it. Human beings know truth. They know when they're being lied to. And right now, we're at a space where I feel platforms are lying to people because we're only making very superficial stories. We think they're diverse, but they're the same story over and over. But I understand why. People need to make money. They want to tell their stories. The algorithms are telling them. So it's a whole thing.
So do you have to add anything?
I would love to add one piece, and this is maybe going to get a little bit spicy, but it is leaning on what
Be spicy,
Matt was saying. Like, okay, we live in capitalism, bro.
Yeah,
it's not
we do.
fun, but it is the system that we live in. And really find any social ill, including writers not being able to write the stories they want, and at the root is capitalism. It's because we're a society that values profit above everything else, even when that doesn't make sense, even when the audience are going like, bruh, I'm tired. Not another one of the, you know. So, what I will say as someone who should have gone to do accounting is, all right, I'm going to say two things, but they're all going to come together. De Niro or Pacino, I don't know which one because I always confuse them, wrote in his book, I have done a lot of things for money, and acting has never been one of them, is what he said. Easy enough to say when you're getting paid millions to be an actor. But his point is, he was a furniture delivery man before, and he was doing all of these jobs, and with his side time and passion, he was acting because it was that important to him. We don't live in a world where people get to do what they love for money. We are the anomaly. If you are lucky enough to be able to find work in doing what you love, it is going to become work under capitalism, and that means you're in the factory.
Yeah.
You're making sausages.
Yeah.
It's not work. Sometimes needs to be what you do to pay the bills. And you cannot expect what you do to pay the bills to be the great fulfillment of your life, the great joy. So if you can get a job writing a telenovela, go and write a telenovela. There is a lot to be learned in telenovela. There is a lot you can do in telenovela. You can sneak in stuff.
Definitely.
You can try stuff. You can push stuff. It's 260 episodes. You know, you can give it but a lot of writers will go like, well, I don't write telenovela. I want to make a film. I want to do what you can do to get paid.
Yeah.
And when you are paid and you can pay your rent and you can eat and you're not worried about whether you can buy a jacket for winter if you don't live lucky enough to live in Durban where it doesn't get that cold, then you can go, how much time do I have? What are the networks that I have? What is the story that I love? What if me 7 years and a couple of friends to be able to make it happen? Yeah. Let me do that for my love, my purpose, my passion. Yeah. But at the end of the day, no one is going to get to see your story if you're not getting paid, you know? And so like I hate to, because I agree with what everyone has said. And so this point is not standing in opposition,
Yeah.
but as support. And another side of that is like, yeah, they might not pay you to make the story you want, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't get paid. Write them the story they want, get paid, and then see what you can do. Lean on your networks. Everyone, look, if you're in a community of artists, everyone is a frustrated artist. Everyone has this thing that they want to do, but they don't have enough. So no problem, I'll come and AD on your set. Do you know an editor? Do you think they could take, fine if I was paying, maybe it's 3 weeks, but could they take 1.5 years and cut this for me? You were talking about shooting your own film, and you were like, my family's just gonna have to cater.
Yeah.
They're just gonna have to come and cook so people don't get
And they read.
Yeah. So like, let's get paid, and then let's lean on each other to make the things we want. Because we all have stuff we want to get done. We all feel so passionately about it. So then let's help each other until the algorithm catches up, or not,
Absolutely.
Yes. After this nice speech of Judy, what is the fun of doing this? Like, if we forget about the algorithms and the streamers and the channels, we just have to do it ourselves. Just something to motivate people who are creatives, who are writers, so that it's not all bad. Like, we need our stories that you feel in your heart. What is the fun, and how people can go about it and not be discouraged? Because there's a lot of discouragement, because this, what we're talking about, is very loud, of like, this is the kind of story we want, but there is a space for you to exist and tell the story the way you want to. What can we say?
Oh my goodness, the mere fact that we're doing it, I think for me is fun. Have you been in a space where you are just feeding off the creativity and the passion and the joy from other creatives? I left a job because literally I was sitting in 4 walls every day. I need that connection with people, that vibe, that energy. So for me, that's what's fun about it. And I really think that it is the one thing that does contribute to human existence. I'll tell you why. I know it's weird, but I really think without story, humanity dies, because we cannot feed our curiosity. Our story helps people find solutions. Story helps people laugh. Story helps people see possibility. So it is a fundamental part of our humanity and our existence. So that's what's fun, and our survival as a species. Lord, I sound like he's like a cult person, but yeah.
We'll follow you.
Writing is the cult.
I agree with you, Mabato. I think stories will save humanity, and stories give us identity. They give us a sense of purpose. They help us to understand our place in the universe and our relationships to each other. So stories will never die, and I think we just happen to be in a very weird technocratic moment in world politics and history, where big tech is running the show, and they've taken over the platforms of storytelling. And because of that, they've kind of taken the power away from independent voices that have always been able to, even in the world of commercial film, break through the noise and say something interesting and different. So because we're being led by big tech, we're in a moment of very robotic, algorithm-driven stories. And you switch on, any platform, and you swear that these scripts were written by AI. I'm convinced 90% of these scripts have been written by AI. And also because of that, because they don't understand storytelling, it's really dumbed down storytelling where, things are given away in the first 2 minutes because you don't want people to click the channel and switch to another channel. Everything is on the nose. There's this passive viewing where you have to tell people everything that's happening because people are supposedly washing the dishes while they're watching streaming shows now. So all of that is a symptom of this big tech. But I think moments pass. And I think this moment will pass, but I also think out of adversity, that's where innovation comes. So sometimes when things really suck, that's when creatives have to have no choice but to dig deep and say, okay, how can we figure this out? And what I'm excited about is where sort of digital space is gonna, something big is coming, I feel, and I think it's gonna come from a younger generation. It's gonna come from very subversive, disruptive creatives, and probably somewhere in the digital space, you know. We have to create new distribution pipelines for ourselves as well. And one last thing I wanted to say is, you know, these kind of, settings are great as creatives, but I think also what's missing is our connection with investors on the continent, because there's very wealthy people on this continent, but somehow as creatives, we're not connecting with them. And I think, of the old days when artists, like Michelangelo, whoever, those people were sponsored. And a lot of art over the centuries has been able to flourish because there was patronage, because there was this history and tradition of investing in art and realizing art has value in it of itself. It doesn't just have to be a barcode, you know. So I think if we also try to think of creative ways of how do we connect with patrons, and how do we, start to, those relationships.
I think you've said like the word disrupting. Like I think we need to know that we must disrupt, the whole ecosystem of writing and creativity, and do the things that we want, whether in these other platforms that are not controlling very much. But on top of that, and I'm going to come to you, Gabe, is what would you say that people must go out there and do by themselves bravely? Tuli was talking about collaboration and doing your stuff. Get into a telenovela or get into a TV series that is controlled. This is how you're going to do it. Insert certain things that you want to write, but you can also do it on yourself and collaborate with other creatives or other people who are members of the crew. They can AD, they can do this, that is very important. That's part of the disruption, rather than all of us sitting here are complaining and all of us have different expertise. How do you...
Yeah, I completely agree. It's part of disrupting the sort of hierarchical system that is not just set, but the film industry, is just by going off and making what you can with what you have and the people you love and want to tell a story with. And I think Tuli did say it exactly, that yes, you need to have your work that allows you to pay the rent and put food in your mouth or your family's mouth, but you also then can figure out with very little time and with very little gear and with a few people who really care about a story, you can actually make incredible things because of our sort of digital capacity now these days. So I would say that the best sort of advice I could give to like younger writers especially, and it was the best advice I ever got, was to form collectives or form, even if you're a pair or a group of 3 like what I have or whatever, you can pool your resources for what you can sort of make films with, but you can also pool your ideas and you can be a support system for each other in what can otherwise feel like quite an isolating industry, especially as you're entering it, and because it's so gate-kept. So I think, as you said, like, make sure you can eat and then do whatever you have to do to tell the story that you're burnt out.
I'm sure some of you want to ask questions. Tuli,
Can I also just add
and
one
then
more
ask
thing?
questions.
I beg your pardon.
Cool.
And also to say, you were saying like, oh, it all sounds so hopeless. Where's the fun? Guys, it's fun to write. Even, bro, in a telenovela writing room is fun.
It is fun.
It is fun to write. It is
Yeah.
fun to write those scripts. I think part of the disruption as well can be disrupting the idea we have about things.
Yeah.
Oh, it has to be my one song, my one, and it's not, and I'm not going to have a good time unless I'm expressing the deepest desires of my heart. And absolutely that's important, and absolutely let's pursue that, and we've talked about that. But bro, do you remember when Ulontuzana puts a Black's memory on a floppy disk? In was it Days of Our Lives? Yes. Bruh, can you imagine how much fun that must have been in that
Come
writing
up
room?
with that.
Computers are new and they're like, what haven't we done? What haven't we done? Memory on a flop. So also like, if you are lucky to write, even if you think like, okay, this is the 5th story of its kind I've seen, like, what is fun? Bring the fun. And I think the more fun you have, the more you'll realize, oh, there is something new I can do. There is something fresh. There's a way that I can subvert it, that I can enjoy myself, that I can push myself, that I can push the story. And, so like, kumnandi ubhala, guys. That's fun. If you're lucky enough to be able to do it.
Let's take a questions. I'm sure there's people who want to ask questions. Is there anyone past the mic?
Good afternoon. My name is John, and I'm from the Ichikovis Family Foundation. Sorry, forgive me, I think I'm catching something. So, global data says by 2030, world youth population will live in Africa. By 2050, Africa's GDP will pass America, China, Russia combined. My question is to the panel and industry at large. When are we going to start changing our mindset, as in the future is here? And, you know, the world needs us and not the other way around. Thank you.
Let's take 3 questions and then I'll send to the panel. I saw somebody here, Ilya. The lady.
Thank you. A question, but also probably something that might be a bit of a rant, but also a question, is, it came up in the panel, I'm really concerned about the paternalization of our global South audiences and these random ideas about what our target audiences and markets want, like when you pitch things or when things are curated, and as you were saying, our audiences are tired of it, and I'm just wondering about how do we organize to sort of hold our distribution platforms and streamers accountable, or be where is it, where does this information, ephemeral information, come from around genre or around age groups or around racial and cultural segregation in our pieces of work? Because this is consistent messaging that we're getting is no, our audiences don't want that, that's not our target group. How do we, where does this exist? And I'm just sort of thinking about how as creatives we can sort of push for real data, or audiences need to be developed. This is how our industries work. You actively develop audience, and I'm just thinking about what are your thoughts on audience development and data?
There was a gentleman just. Oh.
Hello, my name is Lungile, and I just have 2 things. The first one is for Mabato. I just wanted to say thank you for speaking on executives killing authentic stories. As someone that has made a short film. Sorry? As someone that has made a short film speaking on that, I do feel validated. Appreciate you saying that, so thank you. And then my question is to Busisiwe. How can we, the youth, contribute towards growing African cinema in educational systems? Because I'm personally tired of hearing about avant-garde. I'm not even sure what that is.
Okay, I'll throw these questions to the panel.
Okay, I'll go quickly. I just want to say, in terms of the world is coming, yes, they're coming, they're already here. We as creatives and everyone we work with, producers, whatever, need to get organized, because we're going to find ourselves being again. In a creative, colonialism has taken a new form, and it's stories. It's stories. So I think as creatives, we need to come together and have our stories straight in terms of how do we protect our intellectual property, how do we make sure that we're not on the losing end of these sort of creative deals, and how do we push our agendas as storytellers forward. There's so much money. I look at Beyonce, I look at how she has really capitalized off of African aesthetic. And I don't know if that's a bad thing, but she has. She's used one of our great Tuki Puki, for instance, used that imagery of the couple on the motorcycle in her music videos. It's very intentional, and she's done her research. But I wonder how much we've done research on our own cinematic history. So that's my challenge to the student. Demand that, if you're in school, demand that you want to learn about African cinema. You have to demand, if your parents are paying school fees, you have every right to make demands about what you want to learn. And also to teachers as well. Push past your comfort zone and also educate yourself. I include myself in that. And learn more about African cinema.
Mabato?
I think the questions are actually quite similar in the sense that somebody's telling us somewhere how we should tell stories, who we are, and this is a bit controversial. I do think that especially in South Africa, we've reached a point where there is what I call Bantustan television, because now there is television just for blacks and just for Afrikaans-speaking communities, and we will be told that this is what the audience wants. But I am hungry to see a story as a black woman about a white woman living in Sandton who's got anxiety. And I find that interesting. I don't know why I'm not being allowed to see that. So I think you actually answered the question by saying, and she answered it as well, that we have to be more collaborative, we have to be more aggressive, we've got to be more intentional. But at the same time, I'm fully aware that it's actually about the whole ecosystem. It's from policy to our industry bodies being clear about what it is that they're fighting for us. And this, it also feels so frustrating that every year we sometimes seem to be talking about the same things, but I'll repeat it, maybe at some point things will shift. That we have to stop working in silos, and we have to talk and really push this idea that, you know, it's about changing the whole ecosystem, like I said, from the policies to the financing models to the broadcasters. And yeah, I'm a bit incoherent, but I think part of what you guys are all saying and what we're all feeling is that if we did become more collaborative and more intentional, our voices can be heard and we can disrupt, and therefore that African aesthetic, which is the whole point of this, can be more prevalent, and we can really, you know, boldly go off into the great yonder of storytelling.
I like when you said that it must be repeated. We must also not get tired of repeating. This is how apartheid was fought. We were toying and everything was happening. Let's repeat until we're heard. We mustn't be like, oh, well, we talk about the same thing. Yes, we must be louder and louder talking about the same thing until we are heard, because the moment you get tired, then nothing will change.
If I may add a small point to that, which is that I think it's also, we must remember that we are audience too. We are in South Africa right now, and we can watch something tonight, and what are you going to choose to watch? Are you going to watch our local stuff? Are we supporting our peers? You know, you make something and you hope that people are going to go sit in a cinema and watch it, or watch it on their streaming platforms, but you should hold yourself, and I'm saying this to me as well, to the same standard of keeping up with the local content and teaching the algorithm and the people who are in charge of that algorithm and actually manipulating it, I'm sure, that we want to see stories outside of the demographics that we are forced into in this Bantustan television system.
Bantustan television. I never thought of that.
I love that.
Any more questions?
Hey. Hello, I'm Jigar from Tanzania, and I found this talk very, very inspiring and eye-opening. I come from nature documentary filmmaking. I've been filming wildlife in Tanzania, and I know many, many young people like myself all around the continent are wanting to tell wildlife and nature and our connection stories, but the reference that we always have is the BBC, the National Geographic, the very much non-African wildlife gaze and perspective. So how would you inspire us, or what would you how would you start the journey to find African aesthetic nature stories that represent the people who have the ancestral connections with the nature?
Thank you. Next question. Oh. There's 1, 2, Caesar.
Hi, my name is Abner. I'm with the Writers Guild as well. I've been there for quite a while now, actually. The reason why I bring it up is because I think there's a disconnect. There's definitely a disconnect between the business side of film and the creative side. So I think sometimes what happens is you think as a business person, yet you're a creative. So I'm a very creative person. It's very hard for me to understand things that looks like coding and stuff. So my process will be different. So my yardstick when I was young was American films. So I would sit and I would watch American films and I would enjoy it. I would also see the local TV. But then I did a course with the writing, I don't know what, workshop or something. And that was the first time I watched an African film. And I saw like a cow and a woman and they were walking. And that was like for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And then I asked the guy who was teaching us. It's a white man, an old white man, he's dead now. And I asked him, his name was John Anderson. Very nice guy, John Anderson. And he did it for free, mind you, in his spare time. That's what we need more of. He didn't need to do that or open up this thing and show us what film is and open up our minds. There was no money involved to see how we can turn over a rand. But we were the thing that was all common amongst all of us is that we were creatives, we were writers, and it was something genuine. The fact that we could all be in that creative space. And that's why I enjoyed this one, because this is writers. I feel very disconnected with the other rooms because they try to figure out how to make money.
Yeah.
So if
We
they
are
try
the
to
real
figure out how
thing.
to
And we
make
must
money,
make money too.
the horse comes before the cart, though, my angel. The horse comes before the cart, or does the cart come before the horse? That's what we should be asking ourselves. And what we should also be asking ourselves is, you're asking what is a film, like a South African film. That guy mentioned something very important that I didn't think about. He's in Tunisia, which I don't know where he is. He's doing nature documentaries. Once upon a time, he watched BBC. And the way they tell stories are very different. Here is the buckets moving over, blah, blah, blah. How do we do it as South Africans? Here's a book. Da, 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 da. It's a different type of nuance. You tell that story differently in a South African context. So I would then go sit by him and say, what do you think about animals? Before I start writing. Now I start thinking his process. I think an animal is like this. Western people don't see animals the same like we see animals in South Africa. This is how we eat. We look after the cow so the cow can feed us. America is like, that is a cow that makes my burger. So there is a disconnect. Find our flavor, find their flavor. If we have to do apartheid 11, 15 million times, let's do it, because guess what? They could make Fast and Furious 13 and we watch. Are you with me? Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone.
Good day.
Evening, because we are in this space.
Good day.
Yeah, it feels like evening, yeah. Interior. Okay, afternoon, everyone. My name is Sizwe. Two things that I wanted to say. Firstly, I wanted to comment about the young man who spoke about academia and why, we're focusing on those theories and whatnot. I'm talking in capacity as a university lecturer. I teach second and third years from time to time. One of the things that I've found which puts us where we are is the fact that we don't have any course for distribution. We only teach the aesthetic of filmmaking. We teach writers, we teach producers, we teach directors, who then, when they graduate, will then maybe be absorbed by a multi-choice and do like a talent factory, and then they become our commissioning editors. But we do not necessarily have a course of distribution where we can then have our own version of your Netflix, your whatever. So I think also in the academic space, and that's what I always push when I go to such festivals, to say we need to actually also look at the education that's going to empower us so that we don't have to go out there. And then the last thing that I wanted to say, because I know Busi and Bongi are not going to say it, is I'm going to repeat what Bongi said, that we need to amplify our voice and we need to continue to talk about the various, even so, though it feels like we're ranting and venting and whatever, and there's only strength in numbers. So we are part of the Writers Guild. If you want an in the industry, join the Writers Guild, WGSA. It's writersguild.org. writersguildsa.org, something like that, right? I forgot whatever. But just Google the Writers Guild. Google the Writers Guild. Come and join us. Advocacy. We are led by Busisiwe. You've heard the insight that she has. Our vice chair is Bongindaba. Come and join us so that we can actually fight these struggles together. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll give it to my panel now to wrap up. And if anyone wants to chat, you can see them as we file out, because we are running out of time. I can see the guy with that thing. Oh, quickly. Just say it now. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Temba Baleni, filmmaker. I've got one question to the panel. Do you think we have good writers?
I'm one of them.
Like in terms of...
I'm great, not even good.
Yeah, because I think one of the challenges, why I'm asking this question, one of the challenges actually that we as audience, we feel actually that we watch like the same stories, more especially in our television space. If it's not a crime, it's political stories. So asking that kind of question.
I think Mabato had spoken about that. It's the restrictions, it's not the writers. But I'll let my panel take over.
Agree.
I just want to say about this, your question and what you asked earlier speaks to each other. Because also what happens is because of this sort of forcing into this Bantustan type of programming, it makes us as writers look like we're bad. And it breaks my heart because I know how talented our writers are. But forced to tell very specific stories that are very repetitive. But I think there's power in the audience. You know, and I don't know if it's going to take something radical where we're just boycotting TV, you know, where we're just saying we're not going to watch any more television until you give us diversity and you give us stories that are good. But we have to do something because, you know, otherwise the power is still shifted in the executive's hands.
Yes. I think to Gabe's point, and it speaks to, like, be the audience you want to see in the world. You want to see diverse stories, engage with diverse stories. You want the local storytelling to be boosted, engage with local storytelling. So yes, we are writers and filmmakers and producers of TV, but we are also the audience. And I think we do need to take a greater responsibility in that regard. I think it can be, and this is, I'm also speaking to myself, you're like, well, I want to see this kind of stuff, I want to see this kind of stuff. And then a South African makes something like that. Or you hear that someone in Kenya has made something like that, and you're like, yeah, but no, but like from Tarantino, you know what I mean? So to be a responsible audience member as well. And then I wanted to say about the gentleman in wildlife, like, that had never occurred to me until you said it, and then you said it, and I thought, of course, there is something wrong, that every nature documentary I've ever seen has been really David Attenborough from the BBC. And so I think rooms like this and conversations like this amongst ourselves are so important as well, because that's just opened a door in my mind that'll never get closed now. And I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, of course, that is also a part of it. And I don't have the answer for you, but it's something I'm thinking about now, which I'm 39 years old, it never occurred to me. And now that it has, I'm like, how did it never occur to me? And so I think part of the value is just to have these conversations together. And other questions we don't have the answers for, but in talking with each other and engaging with each other, I think that's part of the responsibility as well. There's a way that we can figure out the answers together.
Gabe?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say to your question earlier about sort of where's the fun in this, I'm feeling particularly hopeful after this discussion, and I think that's because we are in the business of ideas, and we've been sitting here talking about ideas with you and with each other, and I think this is basically what a writer's room feels like to me, so it's really fun, and it's been a thank you.
Mabato, how's the Bantustan?
Hey guys, give us a commission.
Trademark.
Anyway, just to wrap it up, I think for me, one of the things we can accept now is that let's give ourselves grace. We are in it. We are writing. We are creating. You, us, all of us are in it. In a few years' time, we will look back and say that was a moment, that was an era. So we are. Let's not be hard on ourselves and say we don't have. Let's not work from a place of lack, but actually abundantly. We've got ideas. We are doing the best that we can. And I think to wrap it back to the topic of the African aesthetic, the fact that you're creating is the African aesthetic. You are the African aesthetic. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. You are the African aesthetic. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Bongi.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.